I mean, money-wise, dollar amount, definitely football. But it's interesting as you think about the dynamics of what makes up a football team versus what makes up a basketball team. Kind of going back to this collective mindset, one player can change a basketball team. So if I need to shell out 600 grand to get one kid, that changes my team. If I shell out 600 grand for a football player, that, first of all, if he's a high schooler, that kid's not going to play for 2 or 3 years. And then even if they do, they may not pan out. And then injury risk is a lot higher. So I think ROI from businesses, or from a business standpoint, basketball versus, football, I think basketball is probably higher.
I spend a lot of time as an early stage venture capitalist hearing pitches from founders. Whenever I hear a similar pitch of something new from more than a few different entrepreneurs, a bell goes off in my head. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. What changed that is creating an emergence of companies trying to exploit this space? And if I don't already know about it, I need to. It could be because of a trend or a movement or something ancillary or another invention or new technology. But it could also be because of changes in legislation. I have the pleasure of bringing an entrepreneur on our show today that was the first to give me an awareness on NIL a couple years back. Name, image, and likeness of college athletes. This involves a court ruling that stopped the NCAA from not allowing athletes to be paid. Zack Oliver is the founder of Matchpoint, and the show today is going to be less about our guest and more of a conversation with Zack acting as the subject matter expert in this space. In addition to our thoughts on NIL itself, we are going to talk about the emergence of business plans born out of it, of which I'll be sharing my thoughts on their longevity. Welcome to the 2000% raise, Zack.
Hey, good to be here. Excited to chat about the new emerging space. A lot of stuff to talk about. A lot going on.
Awesome, man. Awesome. It's kind of funny how we crossed paths, right? And you were a former college athlete yourself. Why don't we start there and give us a brief overview? And the only reason I'm asking you to do that, Zack, is because when I see founders that have an actual tie-in to their business, and it's not just something they saw on TV or something that they heard about, they have an actual tie-in where they personally would have been impacted by this in life experiences. Could you give us a little bit about your background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Louisiana, played football all my life, had the gracious opportunity to be able to attend Northwestern. I was a quarterback. I redshirted my freshman year behind Dan Persa, and kind of played the backup role for all of my time really at Northwestern behind Trevor Siemian, Clayton Thorson, and those types. Funny enough, during that time, I was actually at Northwestern when that whole unionization thing kind of went down. So really the beginning of NIL started back in 2012, when I was at Northwestern. So it's really come full circle to kind of where we are now.
So Zack, why don't we start off though with you giving us a quick overview of NIL and really how it's evolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So not to get back too far, but July of 2021, effectively the NCAA ruled that college athletes could monetize their name, image, and likeness, effectively being able to be influencers for the first time. So the rule specifically states an athlete can receive compensation in reception for deliverables. They didn't define what that compensation is or cap it, and they didn't define what the deliverables had to be. It just has to be some deliverable for a dollar amount. It was expected to be only 6 states coming up on June 30th of that year. And then July 1st, they ruled that all 50 states had the ability to give their student athletes the ability to gain that NIL. That's kind of really what led the charge of most of 2021. Leading into 2022, student athletes basically were able to work with donors of schools to basically be able to, the donors can aggregate money in the form of what they call a collective, and then redistribute those funds back to student athletes, again, for deliverables, but undefined deliverables. So we're seeing, charity events, and we're seeing autograph sessions, and we're seeing exclusive, kind of tailgate events. So you're seeing most of the money now that's being transacted in the NIL space is actually coming from donors of universities. But that being said, you're still seeing these, chunky deals with Nike and Gatorade and these big companies are actually using it for what it was intended.
Pause right there for a second. Okay. The donors and alumni related events, a tailgating event. So I'm, superstar ABC starting tailback of LSU's football team. And I get invited by a group of alum to, to watch a basketball game with me at their party in the basement for an LSU basketball game, and special guest starting tailback of LSU. He could charge him $5,000 for that.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. He could charge him $1 million.
Yeah.
Like there's no amount that's saying that you can't.
And people that aren't familiar, think about how far this has come. Okay. I'm just going to give you, I got a few years on Zach, but gosh, you go back to the late 90s and it was nothing new. It had been like this forever before that. We weren't even allowed to get damn jobs. We were able to work during summer. We were able to work on winter break. We were able to work on spring break, but it was to protect us from exploitation of donors and alum giving us a freaking no-show-up job. You know what I mean? Like we're in the freaking Sopranos, sitting there with a lunch pail, getting paid hundreds of dollars to do nothing. They didn't even let us do that. I would work side jobs like this, a couple things like under the table when I was in college that, I think I probably passed the statute of limitations. Not now, but it's a joke. It's a joke. And me, I have that entrepreneurial spirit in me. It was literally stifled, man. I started a business in college and it was event promoting, and I did large scale concerts and shit. Everybody at Northwestern, at DePaul, at University of Chicago, it was called Star 69 Events. Everyone knew about the Star 69 party. Everyone knew John Cerasani was behind it. But guess what? My name wasn't on shit. We didn't have social media. I would send out emails and change the outgoing address name because I was too stupid to realize anyone that wanted to figure this out could have looked at IP addresses. So I'd change the outbox name to Star 69 and send out bulk emails with everyone blind carbon copied. And every once in a while, I'd forget the BCC and regular CC, and people get pissed. And anyways, how far times come. And, fast forward sometime between then and where we're at now, you look at that situation at Ohio State that ultimately got Jim Tressel fired. And that was what? Terrell Pryor did what? He's yeah, he got free tattoos. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. That's Brian, my studio manager. He got free tattoos for giving away freaking signed autographs on shit. I mean, and then Jim Tressel tried to cover it up. The cover up was worse than the crime. But was it? Because that's a pretty bad crime in itself. Pryor wouldn't have been able to play in that bowl game, and I believe it was the national championship that year. He wouldn't have been able to play in that damn game if this got outed, right? So I don't know, man. It's just insanity. When I was at Notre Dame, you'd hear the stories. This never happened to me, but you'd hear the stories about the $100 handshakes. Hey, he's giving you a $100 handshake, and I don't know. To me, I always thought it was an urban legend because no one ever freaking gave me one, man. But anyway, thanks for that background, Zach. And was this inch by inch? If where I was at in the 90s was point A, and now the Wild Wild West is point Z. During that 25-year period, Zach, did we go A, B, C, D, or did this take us from L to V?
Yeah, no, it felt like the NCAA made a rash decision, realizing that they were starting to lose control, where state by state, every state was going to have a different ruling on what was allowed and what wasn't.
Okay.
So then they made this overarching pass in a very broad way. And unfortunately, it's people are exploiting that. So I agree with you. It kind of went from L to V or to Z, where like, and maybe we're not quite at the end yet, where there's supposed to be some sort of federal legislation out, and what that looks like, I don't know. No one really knows.
Okay.
Maybe it restricts agent involvement. Maybe it restricts some sort of school involvement. But that's kind of undefined yet. So I would say we're probably around Y right now.
Okay. And I mean, the ruling was essentially just that there's a free country. You can't stop people from doing this. And so the NCAA in turn just kind of, okay, free for all. We don't know what to do, but there's probably restrictions that they can introduce. Maybe that's why we're only at V or Y or whatever, because there is probably going to be some restrictions that they could maybe legally get away with. Do you think?
Maybe. Again, they don't have like the ability. They're a rulemaking body. They're not like a legislative body.
Okay.
So like ultimately, I think it's going to fall on the government to kind of come in and put confines on like what's doable and what's not. I mean, it seems like more and more things are going away from the NCAA. These conference realignments, these things of that nature. This transfer portal situation, which is a whole nother topic.
Yep.
Like NCAA is seemingly losing control.
Yeah.
And I think that, that was their way of saying, hey, like, do whatever you want. Like, we still want to be relevant. Keep us relevant.
Exactly. Oh, yeah. That's, that is kind of keep us relevant, please. And it's funny, because there was a lot of talk about how it's going to be different from one state to the next. And how long was that period? Because I remember, like, wasn't it like the California schools aren't going to they can't play against schools out of their state? There was all this, that seemed like it came and went pretty fast, huh?
It did. Like prior to July 1st of 2021, there were, I think, 6 states, and it was like California, Florida, Louisiana, and a few others. But like certain states would have restrictions on like, all right, 70% of your income has to go to the athlete, and then 30% has to go into a trust. Or certain states had different regulations on, what is able to be promoted. Like, can I promote a bar that has food? If it's still a bar, like there's a lot of different ups and downs. So just instead of trying to figure out what was allowed state by state, they were just like, everything goes for the most part. Again, there are still some specific state legislations, but they're not overly restricted.
Yeah. And one of the things that I spoke to Roddy about is the fear of, the Roddy Whites of the world are these fantastic players, maybe, and they go to a college like UAB, your alma mater, Northwestern. They have a history of getting maybe the 3-star recruits that turn into first or second round draft picks, and the Central Floridas, maybe the San Jose States or whomever, they'll get those stars every once in a while. Marshall Faulk went to San Diego State. You know what I mean? What's going to keep a Marshall Faulk on San Diego State when he could transfer now to USC and probably start getting paid $500,000 and he doesn't have to sit out a year? Hello?
Yeah.
So,
no, super fair.
Yeah.
The transfer portal was an absolute mess this year. Largest number of transfers, I think, of all time.
Okay.
You're starting to see people leave their schools, go to a different school, go back to the original school. Like, I think we saw that a couple of times this year. But
Wow.
and then we haven't really lived through an iteration of transfers and then transfers getting injured, which obviously happens in the NFL. But then they have an entire career after that. You transfer, you get injured, you get paid all this money from a booster or a donor. You get injured, like legally, they still have to, like, they probably already paid you. They probably still have to pay you for that image and likeness part of this, right? Because like, it can't be tied to enrollment or to athletic play.
Okay.
So you're going to see some buyer's remorse, I think, from these players who are coming in, putting all this money for these transfers and these high school athletes,
and that it can't be tied into play. That's an NCAA rule, or was part of the ruling, or what?
That was part of the ruling. Cannot be tied to athletic play or enrollment at a university.
Got it. Okay. What do you think the biggest misunderstanding is about NILs, Zach?
I think that there is this understanding that all student athletes everywhere are just like raking it in. I think that there are a few select schools, that are, who are making good cash. And like, those are obviously the ones in the press. I think this could turn for the worst in some interesting ways around, like, if Title IX somehow is able to kind of get involved in how this works and the just distribution of funds, and like, not even necessarily bad on the female part, but on the lower level non-revenue generating men's sports, and like what that means for them, and like how are they going to be phased out if ultimately Title IX is basically saying not equal distribution of opportunity, but like equal distribution of funds. Like, that's a potential problem. But I think there's still a lot left to be or uncovered in the space.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And anyone that's played Division I athletics at major institutions, there's already a disparity between. It's not by design necessarily, but there's already a disparity on maybe how the football players or basketball players are treated versus maybe some of the lower non-revenue generating sports. And the fact of the matter is you're using the same facilities a lot of the time. You're sharing weight rooms, you're sharing, indoor facilities, you're sharing the same training table where you go to dinner, you're sharing the same academic advisors. So you're already around each other all the time, but there is this gap. When I was at Northwestern, we weren't even good my senior year, but you know who a freshman on the golf team was? Luke Donald, who ended up being an awesome PGA star now, right? I could tell you right now, me as the tight end on a mediocre football team had more clout around those facilities than Luke Donald. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. And now, if these people walking across the halls from each other, one of them's freaking millionaires and the other one ain't getting shit. You know what I mean? Luke Donald's probably a bad example because people figured it out pretty damn quickly how awesome he was. But I want to turn talking now about Match Point. And what's really interesting, Zach, is I think you kind of just touched on it, right? The superstars, all right, are getting paid. I met a kid named JJ McCarthy when he was a junior in high school. All right. He's out here from Chicago. And anyway, some people my kids were friends with, some kids he was friends with. And he starts telling me how he committed to Michigan and how he's the first class at Michigan that's going to be able to get paid. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, you got a Michigan quarterback that's a junior in high school right now, already looking ahead to how they're going to get paid. The JJ McCarthys of the world ain't who we're worried about, man. All right. How are you tackling the the offensive guard who maybe wants to get hooked up with a car dealership and, hey, it's the big boy sale for, our Escalades, and you have a 350-pound kid that nobody has ever heard of, but he plays at Arkansas or something like that. And I think what you're doing, Zach, is genius. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it. So basically Matchpoint is a two-way marketplace that connects student athletes to brand deals. We really do try to focus on that kind of 98% of student athletes around the country. We have an algorithm that matches businesses to student athletes based on mutual interest, social media following, location. And then we also integrated chat functionality and then transactions. So basically the entire influencer relationship, we aggregated into one platform. We have a mobile app and a web app. We launched our MVP April of 21, actually prior to NIL, kind of wanted a proof concept leading up to it. And then, July 1st hit and we're, off to the races with, brands and athletes onboarding. We've solidified a pretty good stake in the South of gaining athletes and doing deals, with LSU and Alabama and Arkansas and schools of that nature. But there's been a lot of, like you said, we're talking about before in the collective space and then how the space is developed. Any startup, whether it's us or anyone else, has to be able to make these little small pivots, left and right and try to stay relevant. So that's been the focus and challenge, over the past, call it 6 months.
Anybody not familiar with the tech space from a venture capital perspective or an entrepreneurship perspective, Zach used the term MVP, that stands for minimum viable product, which is really key for any early stage startup. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to really do jack shit before you have an MVP, because before you have an MVP, it's just an idea on the back of a damn napkin, right, Zach?
Exactly.
How hard was the technology component to develop?
Yeah, so we were able to find two good developers, one front end guy, one back end guy, to kind of get that MVP to the base level. And I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but if you are not embarrassed with your MVP, you probably released it too late. So we were we launched it to a point where we were satisfied, but then now looking back on where we are now, it's been an absolute grind trying to add new features and protect old features and fix bugs. And the tech development process is something that I previously had no experience in, not a coder, not a developer. But it's been fun learning about it and kind of getting a sense of what it means to build something, with code versus build something, with my hands or anything like that.
That's awesome, man. If you're not embarrassed about it, you probably rolled it out too late. That's kind of how I feel about this podcast. If I was too polished, Zach, I started it too late. Just had to kind of dive in. Thanks for that perspective, my friend. That's awesome. So tell us about this, man. So it's based on how you just answered that. You weren't even a tech guy. I mean, did you consider yourself an entrepreneur? Are you working a 9-to-5?
Yeah. So previously I was actually trading at Citigroup in New York. So, wanted to establish a foundation for myself in finance prior to anything entrepreneurial, which I kind of always set that goal for myself. But what's interesting was actually able to leverage a lot of the concepts and tools in trading into Matchpoint. Like you've got, supply and demand. So you've got buyers and sellers, and the buyers are the businesses and the sellers are the athletes who's selling their services. Kind of this idea of a clearinghouse, where a business pays money, Matchpoint holds those funds in escrow and then releases them at the time where it's, meant to be, completed, when the deliverables are fulfilled. So there's a lot of different kind of back and forth that I was able to kind of leverage from my time in finance to this, even though I didn't necessarily have like a technological background. I felt that I was able to describe what I wanted to someone well enough so that they could build it. And then basically all along the process, they check and they're like, hey, like this is what this is going to look like. I'm like, oh no, maybe move this here, move that font, center that. And then so it's like building a house, kind of like you get to see it really kind of progress over time to kind of get to the endpoint.
Where were your initial developers located?
They were here in the States.
Really?
Okay. So one guy in Texas, one guy in Arkansas. And then we've since kind of expanded, and we have a firm actually based in New Orleans who retains developers, again, still in the US. And we similarly, we have a project manager. We'll speak to the project manager about kind of what our goals are or what our, product roadmap looks like.
Yep.
And then there can kind of take step by step to getting that completed.
And the actual developers themselves under the project manager, to your understanding, are here in the United States as well? Okay.
Yep.
That's interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs out there, if you're not familiar, one of the ways, I don't want to use the term cut corners because that has a negative connotation to it, but a far less expensive way to build an app. And again, it's going to depend on the app itself, right? But you see a lot of outsourcing right now to Colombia and of course India. So that's interesting, Zach, that you kept it all here in the States. Good. I mean, good for you. Not that I'm against outsourcing it, but good for you on that.
Well, there was some strategy there too, because like it was such a new space. It was in sports. It was in American sports.
Yep.
So to be able to like relay like all this information about like what we're expecting in terms that people could fit culturally and like in their mind.
Yeah.
I think that it was important to kind of getting us to where we are now versus outsourcing to India, which again, great developers, but for them to understand college sports and then NIL and the history, it would have been
yeah. And you know what I've found is even when you have an American project manager that's still using developers in other countries, it's he's just a lot of times he's just the messenger. Hopefully it's somebody that's tech savvy enough to figure it out. But once you start getting those emails at 3 a.m. because of the time zone differences, and you're sitting there waiting all day, hey, we got to change this, and your project manager that's here in the States can't do it because he doesn't know how to do it, you got a problem, man. And God forbid one of those guys in India or Colombia tells him to go, pound sand and working on your app anymore. Then he's starting from scratch and he's coming up with excuses. You don't even know what the hell's going on because he's your only point of contact. So, anyhow, so did you have to raise a lot of money to get off the ground?
So we raised funds of 7 figures in late 2020 to kind of get to that MVP point.
Okay.
And then since then we've raised kind of like a family and friends round. We're in the middle of another raise right now. So, that's going to kind of be an ongoing thing as being an entrepreneur. Like, when you finish a raise, you're probably starting another raise, or at least having the conversation.
The money's already spent that you haven't even raised yet. And And I'll tell you what, Zach and I was involved in another business that I was helping operate. And that was actually the onus behind Zach and I connecting on Matchpoint. He was looking to see if using his service was a good connection for the company that I was involved in. Zach and I had not talked about me being an investor, and that just wasn't the nature of our relationship. So I'm just pointing that out because I make a point of other entrepreneurs that have been on the show that I have participated with them on, and that I make it very clear this is not a solicitation. That said, Zach, what kind of are you doing a safe note, a convertible note? What kind of valuation are you at currently?
Yeah. So our first raise was a convertible note. And we're currently in a safe right now. So we have a 20 mil cap on the safe.
20 mil cap on the safe. Okay.
Yeah.
And
what's 20 mil cap or 20% discount? So better of the two.
Gotcha. And what are you looking at in the future? What would be your ideal, path here for an exit?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to think long-term as a entrepreneur, like founder, my goal is within a year to have, a 50 million round Series A. That being said, being like forward looking and seeing where the space is and where it's developing, like it seems like there will be consolidation in this space probably within 2 to 5 years. Because like you mentioned before, you're probably talked to other people who are developing similar products. We've talked with large media companies, we've talked with large agencies, we've talked with, large social media platforms about like, what does it look like to, we want to be involved in this space. Like, what does a partnership look like? What does an acquisition look like? So we have those conversations. And so I think that there should be consolidation probably within 5 years. Or the companies who are in the space are just going to run out of money.
Now that 98% you focused on, I like how you said that 98%. Okay. But how about the 2%? The 2% is the money, right? That's where the big stuff's at, correct? So what are they doing? Are they using like NFL types of agents?
Yeah. So you're seeing people go towards, the CAAs, the WNEs of the world to be represented, or just, unfortunately, every now and then you talk to someone who's being represented by an uncle or someone like that.
Okay.
Which obviously the fear. But yes, no, I think in my mind, the 98%, if we can win that market, gets us the 2%.
Got it.
Like if we can be the platform to gain scale at a very big level, then these people's teammates are going to see their friends getting deals. And then it gives us the ability to basically still now dip into that larger 2% pool of dollars. And then be able to help facilitate those deals. We actually just signed our first exclusive deal with a 5-star athlete out of Louisiana. Awesome. Who's a high schooler, just committed to LSU.
Oh, really? So, cool, man.
Yeah. So like we're kind of dipping toe in that space from an earlier standpoint. I think that there's some interesting, longevity there on the exclusive space.
Isn't it interesting, man? You brought up CAA and UTA. Guys, these are like agencies that are representing like the Tom Brady's and Aaron Rodgerses of the world. Okay. And now we're talking about college athletes, right? And take it even a step further. It's like freaking bizarro world. You know what I mean? You got kids in high school going to IMG Academy. Like this is a total, and you got, teenage kids right now. I got a 14-year-old son. It's like, this is the world all these kids know. This is their only world. And it's freaking bizarro world compared to what was my paradigm. It's nuts, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Yeah. Cause I mean, the TikTok kind of culture, I think
TikTok culture,
that in line with when NIL happened really just like catapulted everything, even faster in an understanding like the power of what influencers can be.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I saw a report like the number one occupation that young people want to have right now is being an influencer, which is like terrifying.
Dude, you know what's so funny, man? I post a bunch of shit now on Instagram, and I finally fell victim to the TikTok lifestyle, and I'm doing that too. But like people will throw shade at me asking me what I'm selling. I'm like, I'm not actually selling anything. I don't want to be like, well, I'm independently wealthy. Go fuck yourself. No, I mean, I don't answer. But it's like, dude, everyone feels like influencing has to lead to like something financial. You know what I mean? Like something personally financial. And it's I guess that's our world, buddy.
It really, yeah, it is. I mean, that's for most people. I think that their goal is to build a community and then be able to leverage that community for some sort of ad revenue.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's funny because the people who are most successful are the most authentic who don't care about that sort of thing. So it's like this weird, like back and forth. Like,
and that's what I think I am, but like people don't believe me. It's like, dude, why are you making all these TikToks if you're obviously trying to sell something? No, I'm not. I'm really not. But anyways, let's switch gears here a little bit, and this is bigger, I guess, than just NIL, right? And financial literacy. Okay, a good friend of mine, Josh Childress, played in the NBA for years, and is a very successful businessman in California right now. He goes and talks to young NBA players, and he talks about, money and everything else associated with it, how to be responsible. And, we've all heard these stories about people going broke, and, it doesn't stop at just athletes. It could be freaking, MC Hammer back in the day, you know what I mean? You hear these stories of people that made $100 million and it's all gone. And I know people get a hard time, man. People get a hard time. It's easy to poke fun at the NBA player, or it's easy to make them a target. Oh, what a dumbass. What a dumb dude. Forget that, bro. How about the 28-year-old guy who married his 27-year-old girlfriend in downtown Chicago, and they thought their shit doesn't stink because they both got 6-figure jobs, and they want to bought a condo in a high rise, bought her a Range Rover and him a C class or a CL class, let's say. And then they buy some vacation club that they really could afford. And a couple of years later, they decide to have kids, move to the suburbs. They're upside down in the other place. Oh shit. Dude, you swear for 250 grand dual income, no kids couple to her not having to work anymore, doesn't want to work anymore. He doesn't want to work anymore because they want to stay home with the kids. Can't afford your shit, bro. So you got normal people in this world. Happens all the damn time. So we're going to pick on some athlete that came from poverty because he made $6 million, and we're going to expect him to know what to do. Educated people that have a sustainable income coming in for years. Someone makes $6 million and then it goes away 2 years later. That's one thing. I could understand that guy's problem. What I can't understand is when you're making 200, 300 grand a year and you have the ability to keep doing it and you go broke. That's the part I can't understand. So we talk about financial literacy, man. All right. Now we got to tell it to 18-year-olds because these guys are making $1 million. I mean, how's this going to work, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the people who are making 7 figures, hopefully they are being represented by people who are helping them along the way. I get really fearful about the people who are making 50, maybe 100 grand, and all of this is being received as 1099 income, so they're not paying upfront taxes. There's no withholding. Wow. They're spending, and then tax time has come around, and basically they're like, "Oh, you owe like 50 grand in taxes," and they're like, "I don't have
that money's gone."
Right. Or even worse, like let's say we do that car dealership deal you were talking about before, and I give you a lease, or I gift you a discount, or I gift you a full car, God forbid. Like that's an asset that holds value, and you have to pay taxes on that asset. So those kids are, unless they're dealing with someone who's literate, like us, or like a proper agent, to say, hey, if my guy's going to need some money to help pay taxes on this asset, then there's going to be some pain.
That whole tax consequence. Wow, man. Wow. You got people that run daycare centers out of their home, and you got people that are hairstylists for 20 years, and they're still having this problem trying to lie on their taxes because they don't have the 12 grand that their accountant said they're supposed to damn pay. Okay. Now you get somebody in their first couple of years doing this. Wait, what? And worse than that, they're super visible. They're not going to fall through the cracks. Right. Any auditor that has a freaking hair up his ass. I'm kind of bored today. Let's take a look at all the Wisconsin football players. Let's take a close eye on this one. Yeah, what a shit show that could turn into. I feel like this is a whole additional layer, man. Like this is a whole additional layer now. Or like are the college athletic departments? Do you think they're going to end up having a person whose role is just this now?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see athletic departments hire individuals whose goal is either helping athletes, kind of find deals or introduce them to them,
Yeah.
answer questions about taxes, answer questions about multiple
Yep.
things. I think that's going to be one of them, but it's this weird, iffy space where, like, if a school is like super risk off, then they're not going to do that because if there's that basically puts them potentially liable if something bad happens or if they give the wrong advice or there's some risk there.
Well, and I'm going to tell you what, right? So you're absolutely correct. Nobody wants to be in any kind of like fiduciary type of situation as a school.
Right.
And I could see schools decide, no, that's their problem. And you say, oh no, they would never do that to their athletes. People don't realize, okay, a lot of these colleges are still higher ed, or all of them, not all, a lot of them, all of them are still higher education institutions. And depending on the I don't know, the fundamentals of that school, the tail's not always wagging the dog. And I mean that like take TCU for instance. They had a problem with their quarterback a few years ago, Boykin, right? And dude, you know what he did for that school? You know what bowl games he helped them get into? He got mixed up in some BS, and guess what? TCU's like, we're not having this. You know what I mean? Like these schools will still put their integrity first, and I just connect to that, to this whole idea that them putting themselves at risk from a legal standpoint potentially to give advice to kids that they probably don't think should be making a buck in the first place. Yeah, man, I can see a lot of them staying away from that.
Yeah, no, and I think that some of them have maybe they retain a CPA, maybe they go down this route, but I still think that they're in learning territory.
Yeah.
When it comes to that. So sometimes it does fall on companies like us to be able to answer questions or give non-formal tax advice on kind of what we think they should do, and we help them. We distribute 1099s for all the deals that are facilitated on our platforms. We're there to answer questions for things that do occur, but there's still so many people out there who are there's a lot of education to be had.
I wonder, would there be the ability to have almost like a payer platform, like globally, where they're withholding the 1099, taxes for them? I mean, there you go.
Yeah.
That should be your next your next venture.
No, it's interesting. Like, you thought about it. Like, you almost need you would need their permission at that point to somehow be a 1099 employee, but then not even necessarily being paid by us, but by a third party, but then we're withholding on their behalf. I mean, there's probably something there.
Yeah. Well, and that's where like law defies logic, right? Like you're right. You can't force the withholdings at a bunch of 1099s, and they're technically 1099s. There's no employer-employee relationship technically, but if we look at this thing logically, you want a bunch of 18-year-olds with no guidance. Okay, now we're gonna screw up their lives for tax evasion a year from now. You know what I mean? Anyhow,
yeah.
Zach, this has been awesome, man. What am I missing? Is there anything that you feel like the listeners should be walking away with on this subject that we haven't touched on as we wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the key point is like where we are now could be very different than where we are a year from now. I think you're going to still continue to see the space, develop and consolidate and merge. I would say, it's easy to point fingers at the athletes and that are making all this money and, say, oh, now you're making the money and you better be playing well. Like, at the end of the day, they're still kids. Like, give them a break. Like, there's still going to be, there's still sports. Like, the reason we all love sports to begin with is because of the competitive nature of it. And I know that there's this now interjection of wealth and money that's into the space. Hopefully it doesn't change college sports for the worse.
Yep.
I'm an optimist. I like to say that. Hopefully it keeps it. We like to change it for the better.
Yep.
But we'll time will tell.
What sport do you think this is going to have the biggest impact on? Football or basketball?
I mean, money wise, dollar amount, definitely football. But it's interesting as you think about the dynamics of what makes up a football team versus what makes up a basketball team. Kind of going back to this collective mindset, like one player can change a basketball team. So if I need to shell out $600,000 to get one kid, that changes my team. If I shell out $600,000 for a football player, that, first of all, if he's a high schooler, that kid's not going to play for 2 or 3 years. And then even if they do, they may not pan out. And then injury risk is a lot higher. So I think ROI from businesses, or from like a business standpoint, basketball versus, football, I think basketball is probably higher.
Yeah.
But football players are probably going to make more just because, there's more of them. They're higher profile in general, and at least at the college level. So,
Well, and it's interesting because if you think about it too, football players are also different in the sense that you could be a great college football player and not do shit in the NFL.
Right.
Usually a good basketball player in college is going to go on to be, a star in the NBA as well, or have some type of career. The best of the best, I mean. And I'm saying the best of the best in college football. And I do mean the best of the best. Might have not, who's the best college football player of all time? Tim Tebow. I mean, he didn't do much in the NFL. On a previous episode, I talked about Notre Dame's last quarterback to win a national championship, Tony Rice. I don't think he even went to the NFL. You talk about Pat Fitzgerald, the head coach at Northwestern, two-time All-American, not two-time All-American, two-time National Defensive Player of the Year for the NCAA. Couldn't make it out of Bears minicamp. You know what I mean? So you'll get these college football players that, hey, man, and maybe this is maybe this is a supporting NIL by saying, hey, this is your chance, get you paid. Let's get that financial literacy component in there though, ASAP, because 2 years from now when you're gone, you're going to be, getting a job as a teacher or something somewhere. And this is your chance to make as much as you can until you're a little bit older. A lot to think about, man. Well, Zach, you are obviously very well versed. I had asked around a little bit about you prior to bringing you on the show. Good associate of mine, TJ Jones, had nothing but the best things to say about you. You are you represent, I believe, what a former Northwestern student athlete should represent. You're very well spoken, and you offered us a lot of insight here. So, thanks for being on 2000% Raise, Zach.
Yeah, I appreciate having me on. Look forward to chatting next time.
And that wraps up another episode of 2000% Raise. Thank you for listening. The best way to support our show is by leaving a rating or review on all platforms you listened on. And of course, by following, liking, or subscribing. Visit us at 2000percentraise.com or at John Cerasani on TikTok and Instagram. And of course, my YouTube channel at John Cerasani's 2000% Raise. Find all the ways to follow today's guests in our show notes. Thank you for being a part of our entrepreneurial journey.